you, Ingrid, for your kind words and accurate bio. And thank you, Amanda and Judy, as well, for asking me to make some opening remarks about your exhibition. This is the first time I've done such a thing at a distance. I hope that my disembodied voice and lowering visage don't frighten the punters. Also, once again, thanks are due to this gallery and the remarkable Art.B Gallery, who's fast becoming a powerhouse on the South African art scene, for acting first as a matchmaker, then a hands-off midwife to today's exhibition. I'm Gregory Kerr, or at least a reasonable digital facsimile, and I hope to stop talking in 15 minutes or less. I suspect that the first thing I should do is congratulate you and everyone involved in getting this show on the walls. I know that the road was not always a smooth one, but look, here it is. A consolidation, a focus, even a locus that allows a step back, a chance to look with a disinterested eye and through the eyes of the casual and the committed observers who come to see the work. A separate and important shift from the making to the made, from the process to the product. An exhibition is a pause to reflect and an articulation of a progress, no matter how arbitrary such shifts may appear to be. These punctuation marks in the text of an artist's life may sometimes seem to be superfluous to the real business of making, inventing, burning, the oil painting, midnight candles. But like punctuation, they serve an important purpose by placing the work a bit further away from the studio and into the art world. Before I sally forth into how I understand that world and the role it plays in these and all artists' lives, I'd like to do what I call in my classes the lovies, in which I allow a short period in which the students can greet, hug, exchange supportive noises, etc. This is important, reassuring stuff, because usually I then immediately zap them with all sorts of conceptual hedgehogs that I throw in their barefoot way. So on with the lovies. A bachelor's degree in fine arts at most universities in South Africa is a 4-year program equivalent to an honors degree in other disciplines. It should be, and sometimes is, an exhausting and exhaustive rite of passage through the agonies of basic design, studio practice, art history, and theory of art. It's not for the faint-hearted. 4 years can be a lifetime of condensed experience. I first met Ingrid when she was in the senior phase of her degree at Stellenbosch in 1995. I first enrolled Judy in the early 2000s, and Amanda has been coming to the workshop since 2013. There's been a lot of time to develop an idea of what makes each of these women tick, and to feel that they are more than justified in wanting to exhibit. While there's obviously a lot in common, certain themes relating to ecology and power, gender concerns, animal rights, and so on, and certain areas of overlap, especially where there's been an imposed formal problem to solve, and of course, the hard work. The hard work is the real game changer. It is the individuality, the oddity and caprice that I think makes the work worth showing. Each artist is driven along the path of making in rather diverse ways. Ingrid has a clear idea of what and how she wants to develop the images. She goes to the source and works her way systematically from there. Her content and her intentions are clear and forthright. Amanda starts with clear ideas, and then she allows a lot of wiggle room, and she deals with this or that notion or concern. She must be sure in her mind that the ground is covered, and that frequently allows imaginative and surprising elements and images to arrive, to delightful effect. Judy is almost entirely intuitive. She bursts with ideas, feelings, empathies, concerns, and a fluent and expressive natural painting style. Once off and running, she'll suddenly be startled to find that the painting is beginning to work rather well. So her default is to run away from it, ignore it, try to forget it, until she comes back and gets it done, often with lyrical results. Okay, that's enough for the lovies. Now for a small dose, maybe not so small, of the hedgehogs. I said just now that exhibitions help to place the work further into the world. Of course, this is important because it gives access to the buying public and is a necessary part of developing a CV. But the act of distancing, of taking the painting forever off the easel and onto the wall, has direct links to the title of this exhibition, Locus of Control. All my students know the term reflexive relationship when it comes to discussing the means by which artworks are generated and by which they are understood. I'll expand a bit on this because it has relevance to the diversity of purpose, style, intention, and content of the work that you see here. A reflexive relationship has a lot in common with a locus of control. In a reflexive relationship, the artist performs little subconscious conversational acts with herself while the process of making is underway. The self here can be a range of aspects of how the artist sees herself, and that voice that answers back can assume as many agreeable or contradictory personas as is required to get the painting going. In addition, the artwork that is causing all this trouble also has a point of view. It is no passive witness, but a full-on protagonist, as it presents in all guises, depending on time, mood, placement, light, and whether one has or has not a hangover. This strange triumvirate, the artist and her spiteful inner voices and the painting, come about because the relationship between the maker, the receiver, and the artwork is always dynamic. It would be unlikely in the extreme for our artist to sit down and decide once and for all that the painting to be made will assuredly turn out exactly as predicted. Whatever control one imagines one can have, we are all changing, growing, or shrinking, becoming calmer, or becoming more aggressive and agitated. Whatever. And the work we make is the same. It mutates as style, taste, social mores, and more evolve and mutate. The novel I read, or that I read when I was 18, is not the same novel I read at 73, even if it has the same title and author. I've changed, and my understanding has changed, and the novel has moved through 55 years of world consciousness and is, well, different. To misquote Roland Barthes from his wonderful essay, The Death of the Author, the novel marches through history an orphan. No more daddy, no more author, no more artist. And the changes start the instant the creative process begins. You thought you were the locus of control, but reflexivity will not let you be that for long. For a while, you and the work and the little voices will have to take turns with the driving. Well, I better get back to the paintings. The paintings you see on these walls have the same multi-identity lives as novels, except that for the most part, the history of reflexivity has so far been limited to the artist and the painting, and maybe one or two critical onlookers giving input. I name no names. At one stage, Amanda's cover piece was part of an exercise in image generation. At that point, the business end of the work was all governed by her, and the painting just took it on the chin. Then, as things progressed, it became clear that the business of the painting, and now I'm going to generalize to all the paintings by all the artists, became increasingly emancipated from the initial impetus, an external locus in most cases, and grew to become personalized, idiosyncratic, and, dare I say it, even symbolic. The question is why? Why does the quotidian become the profound? Why does the artwork transcend the basic intention of picture making and become a source of speculation, poetic connection, and enigma? Before I started writing this piece, I asked the three artists for their take on the title of the exhibition, Locus of Control. And while there was some diversity in their responses, all three touched on the issue of what it is that ultimately guides, energizes, directs, and hopefully justifies one's lonely and often neurotic business as a painter. The common feature is that all acknowledge that their artwork, by whatever means they might understand it, is at some pivotal point taken outside of the primary intentional act. As the images progress, they're inducted into a meta-dialogue and demand meta-cognition, understanding for their existence and their appreciation. The nature of that dialogue is rooted, of course, in the understanding, experience, taste, and other personal predilections of the individual. But, and here is the locus that is vital to the discussion, that experience is part of a much wider cultural, social, political, ethical, theological, ecological, or philosophical matrix. It is a dialogue, but the dialogue is not the stuff of dialectics or logic, because the aim of the interaction is not about the search for an absolute truth or a conclusion, but about a certain state of appropriateness, an apt attitude, like that described by the critic Clive Bell as the aesthetic emotion. Suitability, perhaps. I like to use the word decorum, because the rules that articulate the state of consciousness are outside of practical use. Consider the cave paintings of Lascaux. It is reasonable to presume that they show much evidence of having fulfilled a ceremonial, talismanic, totemic role in their role. In their case, the original decorum would have been relatively straightforward, at least to the Paleolithic receiver. The dialectics would again, presumably, be confined to their efficacy as early science, warders off of evil spirits, entreaties to the gods for good hunting, and so on. We don't share that discussion, of course. So all we post-Paleoliths can do is acknowledge that whatever their original role, they continue to be beautiful and sensitive and perceptually astonishing and decorative and aesthetically pleasing. So they go directly into chapter 1 of pretty well every general art history book that has ever been published. Originally, they weren't art because the decorum did not exceed outside of the need for totemic accuracy. But now they are art because post-classical man has the reflexive capacity to relocate them in history. It is engaging, is it not, to consider the potency of a locus of control that can shift the ontological identity of iconic images from a superstitious attempt to influence the universe to pole position in the great race of art. I hope you aren't too exhausted by all this iconological musing. I need to do it, though, because the questions that are raised, specifically or implicitly by Amanda and Ingrid and Judy in their work, can be addressed only in a context that allows for a multi-layered explication of its content. Some of the work might be considered gratuitous or fortuitous in its origins. Take the tongue-in-cheek inclusion of a locus, get it, in each set. But see what happens when the frivolous beginning joins the discourse. Amanda's locusts, for example, are beset with pesky humans. Their world has been horribly damaged by pesticides. And on the first step in the process of decorum, the pastiche turns to a more mordant satire. Furthermore, the attention to detail and content, color and form, and the juxtaposition with the benighted man in the second painting, swatting away ineffectually as the hordes destroy the world, add patina and the possibility for an engagement that is already far away from illustration or diagram. Similarly, Ingrid's locus of subservience that started its life with a random surface pattern, and Judy's long-fought Nordic noir that transfigures a film still into a metaphysical dreamscape, have histories that move from prose to poetry through the inner and outer loci in dynamic interaction. What we, the receivers, are being invited to consider is the multi-layered nature of not only the metaphors included in the images, but also the conceptual journey that led to that layering. We are always looking at history. And here's the final proposition. If that image develops the power to stimulate and sustain an engagement of responses from us, descriptive and or evocative, bluntly didactic and or poetically suggestive, then the object will have co-opted us into a much wider arena of possibilities, into the matrix of theory and cultural identity that we call art world. If one set out to scratch an itch that was basically a desire to make form, to want to cobble images from nothing much, and then to find oneself taken on the tide of sensation, decorum, enigmatic meaning, in fact, into art world, then that would be an itch richly scratched. I've set aside my original plan to post examples of work and incorporate some delightful insights sent to me by these three women, describing their experiences as protagonists in shifting Janus-faced Loci of Control. I thought better of it when it occurred to me that after the rather dense dust of this talk has settled, it will be you and the paintings, discovering and then shifting your own Loci. The best I can do is to wish you much pleasure in that. And with that, I declare this exhibition officially open. Thank you for listening.